Deadline was yesterday for the teams.
Mm. We're
So
gonna
you
talk
don't
after
know.
the live, yeah.
Oh, you're live?
Yeah, we live now. Let me see if it loading the banners. Yeah, I think so.
Something wrong with our life.
Night on. Let's enjoy it on.
All right, all right.
Cool. Well, yeah, Karen, it's a pleasure to have you join us on tonight's podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Stranger to a lot of folks. However, we'd like for you to just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, how you got into the sport, what sport you just play, and stuff like that.
Right, so my name is Karyn Forbes. A lot of persons know me by my alias, which is Baby. I play football. I'm also an author. I was the ex-captain of the national team, played for like 21 years. Um, Also represented at the youth 17, 20, and senior levels. And, you know, business owner, right? Founder of KK Karen, which is in existence for the last 11 years. So that is a little bit of me, about me. I'm a bit outgoing and easy to talk to, easy to deal with. Yep.
Okay. Um, so football, everyone knows you as a footballer, but
Mhm.
as a youth growing up, people usually be put into different sports. Is it just football you started off as, or what else you used to be involved in?
So I used to play cricket. Cricket was actually one of my first love, right? And what come and happen is that I was good at it, right? And I was good at football as well. But the issue that I was having with cricket is when you bowl, is that to follow up. And I always have been fearful of the ball hitting me in my face. So that's the reason why I said, you see this cricket thing? Nah, not me. Right? And I stuck to football because at that time, I was getting more traction and regards to, getting opportunities via the national team. Right? I did a little track and field in Compre, right? And the events that I did was 400 meters and long jump, respectfully. Right?
Papa.
And I tried a little 1500 at times, but yeah.
So when would you say you fell in love with football? Around what timeline? You realize, well, this is God's gift for you, and this is the platform He has given you to use to spread His word.
Let's say about the age of 7, I oftentimes have been going down the road at the Plymouth Recreational Ground with my family members, some cousins of mine. I grew up playing with Daniel Sarius, Randall Winchester, Renato Jack, Jimon, Renzel, all these persons. And they would have been inspiring me because I oftentimes seeing them going down with their football shoes on the field. And I always wanted to do it. So, many times in the past, you'll be in the backyard playing with them, just a little tomboy. And I used to kick the ball really hard with my toe. And I was
Mm.
like, oh, I think you should come down the road and train with us. And I went down. And from that, it was just history. My coach, James Campbell, bought me my first football boots,
Yeah.
right? And I was really grateful for that because I had like an old buzz up shoes going down to train. And he bought my first football boots. So I was very grateful for that.
Yeah. You spoke about being an author. Um, what inspired you to begin writing? You have two books, not one. How did you get into writing? Uh, yeah.
So I always wanted to share my story. I felt as though, not everybody brave enough to do it, right? Because some of us not at that stage. Because I think I can't use the word pride loosely there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because different people go through different walks of life, and I never shied away from wanting to inspire persons. So I decided to write my first book to share my story upon doing that first book, I would have noticed there were a lot of areas to improve. I do believe I have many books in me because as life unfold and I expose myself more to knowledge, thoughts and words comes to my head and I can't help but put it on paper.
So your first book, Woman of Substance, what led you to give it that title? Could you give us a little bit just of the book, or for people who would have read the book already, what was their takeaway from it? Like if they give you feedback.
So, woman of substance, the word itself, woman of substance, I personally pride myself being a woman of substance. So I had a cousin that I often, reach out to and we brainstorm different names. That's how I was able to get Ticket with Karen, etc. So, all these initiatives that I come up with, it is not something that I just do on my own. I consult with people and then I confirm based on the persons that I trust that I consult with. And I make my decision in that regard. So, woman of substance is basically the name is self-explanatory, right? I always wanted to be an inspiration to women, and I do believe that sometimes as women we do sell ourselves short, right? I think that no matter whether you have a family or certain things would have happened in your life that you know um, we will call it a setback. I still feel like it's still not beyond no one, to really go forth and be the best version of yourself. So I always wanted to inspire young women, and this book was released around COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of doing that is because I know a lot of persons was in a place of uncertainty, and it's just human nature. And I felt like this could be a motivational guide, for others, especially young people in general. Because if you remove the WO, you'll get man of substance.
Mm, okay. What about Beyond the Whistle? Was that and they released the book after they retired. But tell us a little bit like about the book. Of course, you just explained how it's come about the titles. But Beyond the Whistle, is it like your retirement book per se?
So before I touch on that, I would like to say as well, I know you did ask in the previous question about what you asked again? You was
What, like if readers had read your book,
yes,
what was
with
the
readers,
inspiration? It give like feedback.
right? So concerning readers, I think from based on the feedback that I've gotten, the book was easy read. It wasn't too long. It wasn't boring. It had a little bit of everything. So that was basically the stepping stone to the another book, right?
Yeah.
Which is Beyond the Whistle. And again, the name is self-explanatory. Consultation with mentors, etc. Because one of my mentors is a publisher, so he often gives me a lot of great ideas. So Beyond the Whistle is really being able to leave captain's field manual for other captains, for other young people, and not only in the sphere of sports, but also where natural skill sets are concerned, whether you're a barber, a hairdresser, etc. Leadership is leadership. A leadership manual is a leadership manual right across the board.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter because there are certain principles that remain. And the book have a lot of nuggets and snippets that I do believe that can really assist persons personally trying to get themselves together, understanding what it takes to get to where I have gotten to. And I could safely say that I'm still going after more because, I
Yeah.
mean, the sky's the limit is overplayed. There's really no limits to what you could do. So, I mean, you just keep being the best version of yourself.
Yeah. So would you say, now as you're much more mature in your walk with God, would you say that retirement now is writing? Do you see writing as a part of your ministry?
Definitely. I have not leaved out God in none of the segments, right? Of anything that I'm going to do, right? I think without Him, you really can't do anything, right? there was something that I always wanted to achieve recently. And, in getting it, I was really happy because I think
Yeah.
we tend to go for outside sources before we could actually go to the actual source, right? And my celebration now, even though I've been successful, is really celebrating, giving thanks to God. And I think that's just a form of humility, right? I definitely going to continue writing because I think it serves a purpose on the earth. If you're going to have a following, you have to be able to inspire people. You
Yeah.
you have to use your skill set. You have to use your purpose. And I think writing is part of my purpose, and I'm really, really happy that I'm able to touch life by doing it.
That's good. We spoke about a little bit of your football life, the writing. Of course, you are Christian, and I think everybody who have met you could tell by the way you care about yourself on and off the field. I want you to tell us how did your relationship with Christ begin?
So I always had a desire to serve, and I used to go to church with my guardian, and it's just a feeling you can't really explain. Persons have to be able to get that feelings for themselves, so they
Yeah,
could know that they had a true encounter with Christ. And when I leave to go abroad, I just got closer. I met up with a friend. Her name was Natalie Carter, and I started attending this church Koinonia and in Dallas. And I just made the commitment to give my life to Christ. It's always something that I desire. And from since then, I never turned back, you know, because I understand the importance of having a relationship with Christ. A
yeah,
relationship is very important. It's between you and God. And everything that you do is a reflection of what you who you represent because we are really ambassadors for Christ, right?
yeah,
And everything that I do actually was at Phoenix, your hometown today, right? And the kids were so happy that I
yeah,
came, and sometimes you don't even know how who appreciate you until you really get to realize, hey, these kids really adore me. And
yeah,
in thinking about that, you have to understand that you have to be an example if you're going to mix around kids that are coming and we're looking at how society is right now.
yeah,
You have to continue to be an example, right? And I'm really grateful that, principle as it relates to God in particular
yeah,
is what fuels me. It's what carries me, and I tap into those principles, and those are the things that are the forefront. So I don't need to necessarily say a scripture for you to know that I am a representation of Christ. The way what you do, how you do what you do, and how you go about things is definitely going to show itself.
yeah. Yeah, talking with a set of different people, um, you definitely different players, you definitely left that impact on them on the sport. Yeah, I think that is what it's all about. Um, so looking back on your career as a footballer, what are you most grateful for?
I think, I saw it's great that you asked that question. I saw Alex Morgan, right? Retired,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think this is so ideal as an example. And I listened to her retirement speech on her social media, and she spoke about the fact that she has a daughter, she's leaving the game, she's moving on to business, right? And she's very happy that where she met the game and where she leave the game right now, she
Yeah,
knew that she would have impacted the game, right?
yeah,
And she also mentioned the fact that her daughter, right, she didn't have to tell her daughter, okay, or push she into football. She chose on her own. Hey, this is what I want to do. So I say that to say this. When I met the game and things that we would have gone through, it's yes, we understand that, there's a lot of moving parts as it
yeah,
relates to the game and things that needs to improve. But I'm really good. I'm really happy that I personally was able to inspire and touch a lot of lives. Right, may not be able to make the change, all the changes that I would have liked to see, right? But and coming from the other side, you can be able to tick those boxes in the future, right? But definitely, when you look on at a lot of these young girls, like I met Gloria on the boat, right? And she just ran and jump up on me. It's like, you so you know that, just your significance, your presence, what you would have done, the things you have achieved, it now leave a mark on many other young ladies to
Yeah,
now say, hey, this is hope. I could be able, if Karen could do this, I could do it too.
yeah. I think as a sports person myself, young in sport, whatever, you struggle with identity. You get injured, and it's like you feel like your whole life over. Um, what what has retirement, taught you about identity beyond sport?
So could I touch on the injury part?
Yeah, I had that question with that coming as well.
Okay,
So
okay, okay.
yeah, go for it, go
Okay,
for it.
so let me touch on the identity. I think just being proud of what you have done as a young girl, and of course, I know you have that aspirations as well of going to a World Cup, right, or a Gold Cup or something, or winning a Gold Cup or something major like that, right? I think sometimes in life we might want something, but God have us in a different place for a reason.
Yeah,
And who knows? What if I become the coach and we able to achieve it then?
yeah,
you know. But I think just being able to identify myself with the fact that I have impacted the game in some way,
mm,
um, it was huge for me. And I'm really grateful for that because even though I didn't get to tick all my boxes, I know for sure that there are some other girls that's going to, maybe, and I just tell people, don't be like me. It are better than me to become,
yeah,
Y- you don't have to settle for that. Break, break the glass ceiling, you know,
yeah,
keep going forward, keep being great, keep doing great things, right?
yeah,
Because look, for example, Usain Bolt, right? When he ran what he ran, there are other persons that are going to come forth eventually and break that,
yeah,
right? So, take every opportunity. And I'm really grateful that that identity that I've built over the years,
hmm,
right, it still live on today. So football is, even though playing is just a junction, it doesn't means that the way how I carry myself and everything that I do is not going to carry on with me.
yeah. Before you announce your retirement, of course, you would have loved to have gotten a final hoorah with the national team per se. Um, Unfortunately, you got injured. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that injury and now in the position where you are, how you have seen maybe God's hand in that in emotion. Yeah,
So the day that I got injured, I was just telling some of the players, like, listen, I think I've reached my threshold, right? Because I'm sure you know that I've went up for the recent THA elections,
yeah,
right? Which was an extreme experience that I would not even change.
yeah,
But I've been battling many nights. Football, politics, football, politics. I didn't see politics in my rearview mirror. I could tell you that for sure. However, sometimes we have our plans and God order our steps,
yeah,
right? And the many nights of battling that it came to an end without me even having a choice, right?
yeah,
So I was just telling the girls, like literally like 5 minutes before I got injured, I was like, hey, I think that's it for me because I didn't have the best experience, especially knowing one, who I am, and two, how much I have served. And, it was really difficult. It was frustrating. And it was just like, this doesn't worth it at all. Right. And after I told them that, like 5 minutes after, I got hurt and fractured ankle. And that is when so much things was going through my head on the floor. I was like, wait, boy, this come and happen where I just wanted to play for my national team. And you know, you just fall into that mode of what if you did do this and what if you did do that? If you did walk away,
Yeah.
then you know that kind of way. And I wouldn't a wise man once asked me in life, if you had something to go back and change, what would you change? And I said, nothing. Because
Mm.
every single thing that happened to you in life is happening because of a reason, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be able to take everything as a positive, whether it may be a disappointment. And getting hurt at that time was really tough for me because I still feel like I was in the phase of not wanting to finish, right? I wanted to do this one last time, and then politics came in.
Yeah.
Um, but outside of that, I still was very grateful. And, you know, the way how I'm built, right, is that yes, it was difficult being on crutches and having such a major injury at the
Yeah.
age of 34. You know, you take a little longer to heal, right?
Yeah.
So those things were going through my mind. But the way I'm wired or I wire myself is that, hey, this is what it is, and I got to get back on my feet. There are many days that I've slipped, you know, with these
Yeah.
crutches because it's new and having one leg and
Yeah.
and the challenges of you know showering and those things it was just a challenge to me but it made me appreciate walking so much right because you know they say don't miss the water till the well run dry right
True. Yeah.
and when I did not have my leg and had to stay 6 weeks crutching my arms hurt callus on my hands it was so difficult but it really built my character and my resilience and wanting to get back on my feet and I think in my life, you know, some people feel like the biggest wins is monetary. I mean, yeah, we need money and that's great. And I'm not saying don't be grateful. I am
Yeah.
grateful. But I think the biggest wins in life is where money can buy and just being able to walk again because there are days, you know, your mind playing with you. Huh, right? I mightn't walk again. I rebuke that in the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
but very, there wasn't much times that I felt like I won't get back up because
Yeah.
I have wired myself that no matter how hard it is to get up, I will get up and move again.
Yeah. So what advice would you give, young athletes with regards to putting God first in their lives, in their careers, etc.
So I listened to different speakers, and one of the speakers I was listening to, um, what it said is that sometimes when you don't know what decision to make, don't make none at all, and just
Mm.
allow it to play out itself, right? So I say this because there are so many times this generation in particular, even though I'm young, I noticed that when it comes to the hard decisions and so forth, we tend to shy away and give up very easily. But that's where character is built. You have to hold forth. Sometimes in life, you live on the earth for 20 something years and you get to that 1 year that changed your life completely. And I could tell you that about politics because politics changed my life. It forced me to think on a different level, right? Because coming from being a captain,
Yeah.
right, to actually controlling an entire community or
Mm.
communities because of how the boundaries were broken up, it is a whole next step. And in my life, you know, coming down to the latter stage of my career, I just knew that I said, Lord, I really need a new challenge because I was outgrowing the space. And when politics came around, I said, Lord, politics, man, you know this thing, you know? And I vowed to do this. I said, I run my entire campaign clean. I would not go up there and speak ill about nobody. If you want to do that,
Yeah.
you do that, you know?
Yeah.
So I made a stand. So I'm saying that, you know, in life, sometimes things may not go how you would want it to do. And I think a lot of this generation is giving up too easy. So I'm here to encourage you, right? Like I told the young guys at Phoenix this morning, I said I stood on the field for a second and I looked around at the fact that, you know, at U15 level, and they can't play two passes. That
Yeah.
is concerning to me. Now going into the coaching world at 15 years, now you're now getting to understand where the breakdown is coming from, the grassroots level. Right, more emphasis need to be paid on certain things, and a lot of them was just giving up, and we can't afford to give up. You had to push through. That's where character is built. So my
Yeah.
thing is, and my encouragement to young persons that are out there is that you have to be able to want something in life. And something that I've been posting consistently on my social media is nothing is given, because nothing is. You have to earn it. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Nothing comes easy in life. There are certain success principles that don't change. It doesn't matter what profession or what you are doing. Your work ethic have to be able to match the words that come out of your mouth. Right? It's
Mm.
either you want to be an eagle or you want to be a pigeon. Pigeons flock, but eagles fly alone if they have
Yeah.
to, right? So you have to be able to know what you want. So sometimes people look at, yeah, it's the 1%, but what made the 1% the 1%? They are
Mm.
always willing to do something that the others aren't willing to do. And
Yeah.
that means to put in excessive amount of hours doing what you need to do, getting up, feeding your mind the positive things. Your influences need to be positive, right? And I spoke to some of the youths this morning. I know what I told them. I said, so I could count on you guys to listen to your coach, be respectful, discipline, reaching here on time, and so forth. I said, because you had to appreciate these Saturdays. I said, these were the Saturdays that I've appreciated so much that made me into the player that I am today, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot more persons, yes, yeah, we have different persons coming from different backgrounds and so forth. I came from humble beginnings
Mm.
and I push through. So I'm
Yeah.
saying, to the youths out there that listen, wherever you think that you love doing, you go after it, right? And let everything else figure itself out. You take it one day, you like something, and you find out all the details or everything that you need to do to make yourself the best version of yourself.
Yeah. And so kick it with Karen. It's in its 10th editions or 11th edition.
11th edition.
Papa. And what a journey it's been, inspiring to see growth and just another avenue for the youths to be seen, displaying their God given talents. But, it's been a popular, well looked forward to event on the island for footballers. I
Mhm.
want to know what inspired you to create this reality.
So when I started kicking with Karen, let me go right back. So my best friend and I, which is Ria, we were coming
Yeah,
from the World Cup qualifiers against Ecuador, all right? And I said, Gil, I want to give back to my community, but I started what to do. I said, I feel I might do a football competition. We now get a little dust now,
yeah.
boy. You understand?
Auntie Cam's pull up all your pockets.
Yeah, Uncle Sam
And-
outside. So I told her that, and I just was like, she said, yeah, 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 that sounds like a bad idea. And I did it, and it was just men only. And I
Mm,
realized it turned out. I said, nah, boy. I said, I had to try this again and try this again. And I was like, oh, annually, right? And then I went ahead and I started. So it was Forbes Soccer Picnic. And then Durnal
mm,
Maskell, she said, why ain't add kids? I said, no, that's a good
yeah,
idea. I had two categories. It started to get big. I say, wow. So what I did, right? My bachelor's is in business administration. So outside of football, business is something that I hold daily, right?
yeah,
And then my master's is in counseling, communication, and management. So counseling is really to learn more people skill. Communication, you need that, right?
yeah,
And my communication in my master's in communication allowed me the esteemed position to be able to do higher level of research because I get to understand what's research for my book. So a lot of data that I have collected from my book is because of my master's. And then management, you have to be able to manage everything. So everything that I did was in respect to what I see myself in the future doing. So KK with
yeah,
Karen was a byproduct of running as a business, right? So it could self-sustain itself for this length of time, which we are in our 11th year. Nine
yeah,
years we have been at Diplomat Recreational Ground. right? And then we have moved out of Plymouth because of several reasons. One, the lights and the field wasn't, the infrastructure wasn't up to standard, right? And we did some surveys, and one of the teams did mention the fact that the venue was too small, it didn't have proper toilet and so forth. And if you
Yeah.
want to be able to take your product to another level, you will have to be able to grow with your product. So that's
Yeah.
why I thought about the stadium, but I hold off on the stadium for a bit simply because I like the fact that Showpack is big and you still have that community vibes, right? That
Yes. Yeah.
persons are able to come by the field, right? And that's what you wanted. So ideally, the I didn't want to take it out of Plymouth, but because it has outgrown Plymouth, I had to move, right?
Yeah.
And we should have at least 55 to 60 teams participating in the youth category. Plymouth would have never been able
Papa.
to facilitate that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have so many teams coming from Trinidad. We have at least 8 or 9 teams in the youth categories coming from Trinidad, right?
Okay.
What inspired me to do the tournament? So upon, adding the different categories and so forth, I think Plymouth always has been stigmatized as a negative community. And
Mm.
because I came out of Plymouth, you want to be able to show that so many good things could have came out of Plymouth. So
Yeah.
even though I am not doing the tournament there anymore, doesn't mean that I'm not brainstorming other things to have there, if you understand what
Papa.
I mean. Right? So coming out of, the national setup in particular, because of my role on the national team and doing Kikirika, and that takes at least 5 to 6 months of my life to be able
Yeah.
to send out letters, do all the things that I have to do, and then roll out the national team. I couldn't do other initiatives on that Kikirika. But now that I have, wind down my career, I am now
Yeah.
able to get involved with the police show club, right? So
Mm.
through the police show club, we're gonna do some activities there. But outside of that, Kick It with Karen is more funnel around a movement, right? And we want to do it like that because, I have seen many uh tournaments and leagues and so forth have been kept. And it's just are keeping this or are doing this. There's no real emphasis to continue to improve the league, right? And
Yeah.
I, pride myself on a certain standard that every year everybody must be able to have a great experience. We must improve on the mistakes that we have made. So I actively try to be better every single year. So persons are able to get quality for whatever fee that is extended, and we are impacting sports tourism on a high level because if we have at least 9 to 10 teams in the youth category alone, right?
Yeah.
And then we have one female team coming in the next day, along with 3 or 4 male teams from Trinidad. That's almost 16 teams, right? So it is impacting the economy in Tobago,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's airfare, fast ferry, etc. Right? And I think the main purpose and seeing and understanding and gaining knowledge about what the tournament is doing sports tourism. Why I also wanted to give back to the diaspora of Tobago. It don't make sense that you go out, you gather all this knowledge from being abroad and not being able to now implement certain things that you could be able to see the change that you wish to see, right?
Yeah.
And Kiki with Karen has been just one seed planted 1 year, and we are now in our 11th year. And we are very grateful. Every year it has been a challenge for me. I could tell you for a
Mm.
fact, and that is part of what has built my character as a person because now I had to figure it out. There are
Yeah.
many times, and I'm telling you right now that there are so much things that I have to figure out and be strategic about because the tournament it's getting larger, and when it gets larger it calls for more collateral, all right, and you want to be able to continue to execute. So we have like fundraisers, so we don't sit down and just say okay, we're just trying to run here and send in a letter. So it's really an inspiration for persons on the island of Tobago to get the experience, the exposure to play at a high intense level of
Yeah.
competition, and eventually we will be going international.
Papa. Well, I only have one more question. Um, was there like what is your favorite Bible verse? Was one that carried you through your journey as an athlete? or into different seasons of your life that might have been difficult?
I would say Psalm 23. It's a classic.
Mm,
Everything about it, it speaks volumes because going through life, right, Asha, just the mere fact that you making a decision to be an eagle, you will always have people trying to pull you down.
mm,
And that's just a fact. And you have to know that whoever is your source, which is God, He is there with you, walking every step of the way. You don't know who is trying to, pull you down and say this and say that. Because I could tell you for a fact that no journey is smooth. And you have to have that scripture because the word is what does encourage you. And you have to have that scripture that you could lean on. Trust and Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord, and He will direct your path. No, do not
yeah,
lean on your own understanding. And that's another scripture that I've held dearly. And then Psalm 91. You know, those three scriptures stood out to me because I know for a fact that those have helped me. And
yeah,
also Romans 12, 1 and 2, right? And, you know, when I get up in the morning, I ensure the first thing I do is give thanks. Before I even look at some messages or whatever,
yeah,
I say my prayers, I read, and I try my best to ensure, sometimes you do fall short, right? But I
yeah,
try my best to stay connected to the source because He said that He's a rewarder to them that diligently seek Him, right? So you have to understand the word, and the more that you understand the word, your belief system will flow with the word, and everything will work itself out. Even though, because I'm telling you, the going does get tough, but the tougher they
yeah,
get going, you have to hold on. You have to hold on. Because if we had it all figured out today, what's the point of tomorrow? That
true.
is why we are in this position that even though when things not going well, we have to have faith and trust that God is going to work it out regardless.
Well, Karen, that's the end of the interview. It was indeed a pleasure having you here, sharing your story and just giving some advice to the youths. So thank you for your time.
No problem. I have a question for you, Asha, before you go.
Hmm.
Is that okay?
Defense.
No, it's pretty straightforward. I was
Yeah.
just wondering what inspired you to do this podcast, and is this part of your purpose?
Hmm. I think I want to say, as an avid gamer, my nickname for the last World Cup qualifiers under Canon used to be Twitch. So I used to be real heavy gaming in college. And it was just before I signed my first contract. Um, I had gotten like, I guess this was deposited in my spirit. Like maybe I could use the Twitch and do like a testimonial Tuesdays, bringing on a Christian friend, someone to share their testimonies. And I never study. Like I had it in my mind. I was like, yeah. Then I signed the pros, so that kind of went through the window. And then this year, of course, I ain't working nowhere. I had met, I want to say, Camille, and he's a Christian as well. He's with AIA, Elite in Action in Trinidad, and he kept saying, you have a platform, you had to use it. And I home applying for jobs, nothing ain't coming. And it is the only time I want to use the time. I want to say I was praying, and then I remember this came back again. I was like, well, you know, I could start a podcast, and I started brainstorm on how to go about it. And obviously, I wanted to be Christ centered. Like people who come on the podcast, people should be able to look at them and be inspired in that sort to walk with God or see how their livelihood was changed because of God and desire a relationship with Him. So that's kind of why the backdrop behind this, I guess, is obedience in a sense.
Okay, cool. I was just
Yeah,
curious because I think it's a really good thing. And we talk about the inspiration of you, inspiring youths and so forth.
yeah,
And there are different things that are going on in social media and not enough positivity. And I think this is ideal, and this could become a very big thing in regards to having a positive outlet and allowing persons like myself and beyond to be able to come to share their story to inspire others. Um, and you yourself to just continue keeping up the good works with this, and I hope that many things can come out of it.
All right. Thank you. All
All
right.
right,
Thanks to the viewers for tuning in as well.
all right, later. Yeah, later.
See you
Yeah.
later.